Cain looked at his brother Abel, and his face grew dark. Genesis 4. There is a moment in the story of Cain and Abel that captures my attention. It's that instant when Cain realizes his anger, and the Lord says to him, "Why are you angry, and why has your countenance fallen?" I wonder what went through Cain's mind at that very moment. Was he surprised by his own feelings? Or perhaps he tried to justify his emotions, attempting to explain the inexplicable. You see, it's one thing to experience anger, resentment, or disappointment, feelings that are part of the human condition. But it's quite another to acknowledge them, to face them, to admit that they're ours. Because feelings, whether positive or negative, are like turbulent waters. Left unattended, they become overwhelming. However, when we dive into them, when we learn to swim in them, we gain strength, clarity, and balance. This biblical passage, I believe, invites us to do just that, to swim in the depths of our emotions, to understand that we are not condemned to be adrift in a sea of feelings. Rather, we have the capacity to navigate them. It's not about denying their existence, but about understanding their nature and their message. Feelings are messengers sent by our soul. They talk to us, trying to convey something essential, something important that needs our attention. What's more, these messages are not ambiguous. If we learn to listen carefully, to decipher their language, they show us what we need to improve, what aspects of ourselves require care, what paths we should change, and what behaviors we should abandon. In the case of Cain, his heavy countenance and anger were signals that his soul was troubled, that some imbalance had taken root within him. Let's take a closer look at these feelings that Cain experienced, because they are universal and unfortunately quite common. Resentment. This is the feeling that often arises when we compare ourselves to others, when we see their achievements or possessions and think, "I too want what they have." It's a desire for what belongs to someone else, a longing for something that doesn't belong to us. Anger, on the other hand, is a secondary emotion, which means it appears as a consequence of another feeling. In Cain's case, his anger was born from his resentment and his frustration, manifesting as irritability, displeasure, and a readiness to argue or become violent. Now let's address a crucial question. Should we ignore these feelings, pretend they don't exist, or should we pay attention to them? And here's the key. We should never ignore our feelings, nor should we let them dictate our actions. It's like having a group of friends, some good and some not so good. You wouldn't invite all of them to an important event in your life, would you? You would choose those who bring positivity and contribute to a pleasant atmosphere. Similarly, we shouldn't let our negative feelings control us, but we should recognize them, understand them, and decide how to deal with them in a healthy and constructive way. The God of Abraham is not only a God who punishes, but also a God who understands, a God who asks. He asks us to tell him what's wrong, to communicate with him about our troubles. And in this communication lies the remedy. When we open up, when we express what's in our heart, the burden becomes lighter. And if we confide our problems to God, we gain perspective and strength. You see, God doesn't want us to suffer in silence. He wants us to come to him with our feelings, even the negative ones, because in sharing them, we begin the healing process. He invites us to dialogue, to express, and to find solutions. Remember, God didn't create us to live in fear or guilt. He created us to communicate, to relate, to seek solutions together. So when life overwhelms you with feelings that seem too big to handle, remember that you're not alone. Confide in someone you trust, pour out your heart to God, and above all, commit to changing what needs to be changed. Just as God extended a hand of mercy to Cain, so can we extend a hand of help to those who are struggling. It is easy to judge Cain's behavior, to criticize his actions and label him as the perpetrator of the first murder. But I wonder if we are willing to look beyond his crime, to delve into the roots of his story, and see in him a reflection of ourselves. Do we recognize in him our own weaknesses, our moments of anger and resentment? Are we capable of understanding the weight of his crime without judging him? Remember, true strength doesn't lie in never falling, but in knowing how to get up when we fall. Real courage is not in avoiding mistakes, but in admitting them, learning from them, and correcting course. So today, let us not only learn about the consequences of Cain's actions, but let us also explore the depths of his feelings. Let us seek to understand the human drama that unfolded in the Garden of Eden so long ago. For in doing so, we will be better equipped to face our own struggles and those of our neighbors. In this story, we see how envy and bitterness can consume a person, leading to hatred and ultimately to murder. Cain's envy consumed him to the point of killing his brother. The story teaches us that envy can corrupt a person completely. Oftentimes we compare ourselves to others, which leads to envy. We yearn for what they have, and this desire turns into obsession. Cain wanted Abel's recognition, the same recognition his offerings had not received. It was not enough for him to cultivate the land. He also wanted his work to be valued. To face this problem, it's essential to understand where our desires come from and control them before they become destructive. Remember, our happiness depends on us, not on external factors. The Bible tells us that Abel was a shepherd who took care of his flocks. He was a hard worker who likely spent hours walking among his sheep. His life revolved around the animals and the land where they grazed. On the other hand, Cain was a farmer. He tilled the ground, planted crops, and cared for his fields. His work depended on the weather and the fertility of the soil. Both brothers worked hard, but their jobs required different skills and faced different challenges. One day, both brothers decided to offer gifts to God. Abel chose to sacrifice the firstborn of his flock, a perfect and healthy lamb. Cain, on the other hand, brought fruits from his harvest. He selected the best vegetables and fruits from his crops. Each brother offered what he considered most valuable to him. When God accepted Abel's offering and rejected Cain's, resentment began to grow in Cain's heart. Instead of accepting the situation, he allowed envy to take over him. This envy twisted his heart and made him capable of killing his brother. Let's apply this teaching to our lives. What do we do when we face rejection, or when we see that others receive what we wanted? Do we accept it with humility, or do we allow envy to consume us? The story of Cain and Abel shows us that envy can be a powerful and destructive emotion. It can lead us to acts of violence and hatred. We must be aware of this danger and cultivate humility in our hearts. Don't be envious of the wicked. The Bible tells us, "There is no reward for the full belly." Psalm 37, verse 1. When we compare ourselves to others, we often focus on what we lack. We desire our neighbor's possessions or achievements and forget what we have. We must learn to appreciate what we have instead of envying what others have. Cain allowed envy to blind him. He forgot the value of his own work and fixated on his brother's success. But remember, our happiness and fulfillment depend on our choices and attitudes, not on external circumstances. Envy can lead to terrible consequences. It can corrupt our hearts and lead us to commit unforgivable acts. As followers of Christ, we must guard ourselves against this vice. Cultivate humility and gratitude in your heart, because they are the antidote to envy. Appreciate what you have and rejoice in the blessings of others. May this story be a lesson for us, guiding us to walk a path of love, humility, and gratitude. May it remind us that true happiness is not found in material possessions or others' achievements, but in the values we cultivate in our hearts. And may it inspire us to be people who, instead of envying, appreciate, instead of hating, loving, and instead of causing pain, bringing joy to those around us. Thank you for listening. May God bless you, and until next time,